Hey everyone, it's me, Jacob PlaysFerDays Bolen, here with my co-host Alex Sloth King Martinez. Alex, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, Jacob. It's good to be here. I'm glad to be doing this podcast with you. So, what we got going on today?
I'm glad to have you, and today we're going to go through a brief explanation before we jump into everything. So, obviously we were not here for week 1 and 2 for the podcast. Instead, we were kind of letting everything settle, flesh themselves out a little bit, so we had more storylines. We also had more things to think about and consider when we jumped into this podcast. So as a result of kind of letting the things simmer and settle down, we've kind of settled on what we're going to talk about in this episode of the podcast. We will be covering not only the last 2 weeks of games, we'll also be discussing which players we think will shine in their respective division, as well as to which teams moving forward we think have the best shot at making it into the playoffs. Remember, it is only the top 3 teams that do make it into the playoffs. So you guys definitely need to make sure you're getting those wins and staying on top of your division. Alex, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm ready to get right into it.
All right, sounds good. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, starting with Mind Division. So, Alex, you recently started watching all the games and everything like that. When you were watching all the games, what was kind of your initial thought for Mind Division?
Well, OTA Cinder, if you did not see the Galio Gnasher Tooth, I got a question for you. What are your thoughts on that?
Hey man, I'm not one to judge. We have a pro player in League of Legends named Power of Evil who used to build Gnasher's Tooth on Oriana. So, yeah, you can build whatever you want and find success, apparently.
Well, and they did find success. They took a very good victory week 1. They looked very strong.
They did indeed. They are now currently sitting at 3-1, with their only loss being to Famous Gaming. What are your thoughts between those two teams? Which two? Obviously, Famous currently owns the head-to-head, but moving forward, which team do you think is going to end up finding the more success?
Well, I definitely think if OTA Cinder keeps up their bot lane pressure and keeps up their mid lane jungle roams to a man bot, I feel like they can make some very strong plays to keep leading the pack here for my division.
Absolutely. And what about Famous Gaming? How do you feel about them?
I haven't recently got to see that much of Famous Gaming, but I'm excited to see a little more as we agree.
Heard. Well, Famous Gaming, obviously, like I said, is sitting 3-1 with OTA Cinder, with their only loss being to New Meta Esports, who actually isn't currently in the leading stage of the division. They're currently sitting at 1-2 with their only win coming against Famous Gaming.
Yeah, that must have been an upset victory because NMA they haven't been looking very good in their first week of play.
Heard. Yeah, I mean, obviously week 2 we didn't get to see their full scope of all their games because of the server outage, essentially, by Riot Games. They were supposed to play against Team Fish Taco Tempest, who is currently sitting at 2-0. They're technically the only undefeated team left in this division, but they still obviously have their 2 games from week 2 to play out. So, what did you think about Team Fish Taco in week 1?
They looked extremely strong. Team Fish Taco just obliterated their opponent. They were having gold leads that were insane.
I mean, they did indeed, and they definitely looked good snowballing those leads that they did accumulate into wins, which is always a good mark of a really strong team. So between those top 3 teams, Famous Gaming, OTA Cinder, and Team Fish Taco Tempest, do you think that those are a clear defined playoff teams this early in the season, or do you think that one of the other teams has a chance to upset them, and if so, which one?
Well, I mean, obviously, with them doing so well early on, it leads to a good chance that they'll make it further. But if I had to say one team that kind of seems like they can squeeze in there, I feel like the Uni Panther Purples have a good chance if they keep up a strong team fight, like I saw in their game versus TFT. They did pull off some pretty strong team fights.
Heard, and despite getting that loss to TFT, who we said we think is one of the more dominant teams in the division, you think that because of their team fight prowess, they do stand that chance to kind of squeeze in?
Well, they at least have a chance to upset the division and kind of throw one of the teams to a lower standing.
Heard. So let's talk. That kind of covers who we think is going to make it into the playoffs and stuff like that. But that also leaves, New Meta, Dawn Revenant, NCSU Junior Varsity, University of South Alabama, and the Uni Panthers Purple to kind of discuss a little bit more. What do we think that they need to work on moving forward? Let's start with the Uni Panthers Purple. What do you think they need to really work on to try to actually find that upset and sneak into playoffs?
I don't know if these are comfort picks for them, but I don't feel like their team drafts are meshing very well together, or they're not utilizing the pieces and concepts that they're just losing focus in the mid game.
Heard. What about New Meta Esports?
New Meta Esports. Their game against OTCA Cinder.
OTA Cinder, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
It was pretty hard to watch. They didn't get many opportunities to show what they were kind of made of. And I think with the weird Zach pick that we haven't really seen much of, I was kind of thrown off by it, but I'm hoping to see what they have for the weeks coming up.
Heard. So you just think better draft phase, essentially, or do you think it was more their laning that was really kind of their downfall?
Their laning phase that came to their downfall. And obviously the hard disconnects in the early game, hopefully they get those issues fixed, because that's how OTA was able to get a free first blood. I mean, not much you can do about it. Disconnects happen, but I'd like to see them get fixed so we can see the strength of that team.
Heard. What about Dawn Revenant? I know we talked a little bit in private about one of their games. Remind me which game they were, or who they were playing against again. I think it was the Uni Panthers Purple.
They took a game against Uni Panthers Purple.
Okay. And I know you were really critical of them when you were watching that game, because they did have a kind of a tremendous gold lead that they ended up still managing to kind of fumble the ball on and still lose. What do you think that they have to really clean up to not have something like that happen moving forward?
Well, I think they need to shut down this mid laner. Pop-Tarts has been ridiculous. He racked up 52k damage on that week 1 game. 50% of his team's damage. That's just unreal.
So you think it's about more identifying who the main threat is and who they really need to shut down and take them out of the game?
Yeah, because I mean, don't get me wrong, they had great pressure around the map. They were using their Pantheon in great places, making around and use results. But I would have liked to see a little more side lane pressure when you have that Pantheon threat.
Gotcha. Now, NCSU, I know they forfeited both their games this past week in week 2, and University of South Alabama forfeited both their games in week 1. So obviously we don't really have a lot of insight into these two teams. But I think both of us are kind of on the fence about these two teams, because technically they are 1-1, not including their forfeits, and I think that makes it really hard for us to really judge the relative strength of those two teams.
I do really hope these two teams come to play, because it's really nice to even see some upsets in the brackets. If we can see them take some games off of these bigger names, or even upset the middle of the pack, maybe they're going to make it so it's harder to get to that final playoff.
Heard. So we've kind of covered the weaknesses of the the kind of the bottom half teams. What are your thoughts on the weaknesses of the top half teams? What is when you watch Team Fish Taco Tempest? They're a returning team from last season, and I remember them not exactly being strong essentially last year, or last split rather. So I mean, what do you think their weaknesses are rather, from what you've seen of their games?
Well, just off of what I've seen, the weakness is very short, especially when we're talking about the level of the players to who they were playing. Because they didn't show much weakness when they were getting first blood. They were getting bot lane control, dragon control. I mean, they had a 7K gold lead at 15 minutes.
Heard. So you think taking them down is definitely going to be a struggle for whoever they come across?
I just want to keep my eye on them and see if I can find some more information about this team, because you're 2-0 right now, and I don't see them getting dropped anytime soon.
Gotcha. So what about OTA Cinder? We talked about how New Meta Esports was able to upset them. What do you think that their weakness is, and what kind of caused them to drop that ball against New Meta Esports?
I believe they won over New Meta, unless that was a further weak game.
No, it was in week 2 they dropped the game. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. No.
I was going to say they should have won their game week 1 against New Meta Esports.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking of Famous. So let's transition then. What do you think Famous's weakness was that allowed them to kind of drop that game to New Meta Esports?
I just kind of think they dropped the ball in late game. They didn't know how to close out the game. I think that's probably what a lot of teams suffer here. You're seeing a lot of mid lane focused fighting and not using the side lane pressure when you have a lead.
So the classic North American ARAM?
Yeah, it's the North American curse. We got the ARAM, and we're seeing teleports, and they're not really being used effectively. I mean, we could be seeing so much faster of these games going down, sometimes taking 35-40 minutes to finish now.
Gotcha. So OTA, they lost to Famous, so that was my mistake on saying that it was OTA that lost to New Meta. So what do you think caused OTA Cinder's downfall, or do you think it was very much of the same thing, just not being able to close out the game, or do you think Famous just what do you think allowed them to take down OTA Cinder?
I think it was just two really good teams going at it, and it came down to really close decision making come mid game and late game for those high pressure situations when we're talking about Baron control, dragon control, lane control. So I think those are the things we need to look at with these two big teams, is who's really playing that mid game spike better.
Gotcha. So we've kind of covered all the teams' weaknesses. We've kind of spoken about which teams we think will move on to the playoffs. We've kind of settled on Famous, OTA Cinder, Team Fish Taco, Tempest, and then the possibility of Uni Panthers upsetting that order of the top 3. Do you have any thoughts on which of those 3 teams will finish first and be able to secure that bye, or do you think it's still up in the air? Because my vote's for Team Fish Taco Tempest. They're currently sitting 2-0.
With a 2-0, I would put my money on Team Fish Taco, but until I see them play those bigger teams, I want to see some more games before I lock them in as number 1, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they have 2 other teams that are very competitive, and even some bottom teams that can get some upset wins. That is not impossible.
Gotcha. So, out of this whole division, is there a specific player that you have your eye on? I know you mentioned Pop-Tarts earlier. Would that be your player to watch in this division?
That player is the player to watch. Even in his games where they are losing in a huge deficit, he found multiple Orianna ult that almost changed the game for them. So, you look at that player, I say look out, because he's coming to play. Heard.
So, with that being said, let's kind of let's transition over to body division. What are your initial thoughts when you were watching body division?
Well, I was very impressed with SBK Embers. They had a great week 1, 2-0 victory on stream, and they looked strong. They did have kind of a shaky game 1 versus they were versing Alaron Black. Alarion Black. Yeah, so they looked a little shaky, but then their game 2 they just completely crushed out. So I think they're looking good. I think they figured out kind of what they were looking for, what they need to fix, and they're gonna keep walking.
Heard. So what were your? Let's kind of move down the order then. So you talked a lot about SBK Embers and Alarion Black Gaming Black. From what you saw, let's try to do this division a little bit better order. Kind of stick on one team for a little bit longer. SBK Embers. What were your thoughts on them? Do you think they make it out of playoffs as they have started 4-0? And do you think that what do you think their weaknesses are, and what are their chances of making it into the playoffs are?
I think they're very high, but when you have a team right below you, Grim Legion Royal, looking very strong. So I don't want to say that they're going to make it, undefeated coming out of this, because there are those strong teams. Even Alaron Gaming Black can still take a game. So we still have plenty of weeks to go.
Heard. But you do kind of have them as a shoo-in to make it into the playoffs as of right now?
I definitely think they're going to be making it.
Heard. So what do you think what do you think their weaknesses are, or do you think they just don't have any apparent ones that you've seen so far?
I could say that their early games can be kind of shaky, and they can kind of get clustered into their team fights.
Heard. So kind of that traditional North American problem.
I want them to be careful when they're playing into these team fights. Don't get too split up. Keep on with the strong synergy, because that's what's going to find you those victories, especially in this high gameplay.
Gotcha. So let's move on to Alarion Gaming Black then. They're currently sitting at 3-1, with their only loss obviously being to, I believe it was, I gotta find them real quick, SBK Embers, which you mentioned earlier. What do you think Alarion Gaming Black is kind of a shoo-in? Because this is one of the closer divisions. It seems like it's very top heavy. There's a lot of 2-2s, a lot of 3-1s, and then obviously SBK Embers sitting at 4-0. What do you think Alarion Gaming Black's chances of making it into the playoffs are, and what do you think their weaknesses are?
Well, when I watched both SBK versus Alarion, and I watched them also versus Insanity. They completely destroyed Insanity Gaming. So when I saw them versus SBK, I thought this is going to be a much closer game. They were very, very close. So I don't want to take anything away from them. They're a very strong team. They know how to team fight. They have the comeback potential. I think they can easily do it in the early game. Shifting into their mid game, just keep your focus on mid game. That's a lot of the things I'm seeing in these fights, is that mid game is making the game. So a lot of teams need to look out for that.
Heard. So what do you think about Grim Legion Havoc then? Because obviously Grim Legion Royal rebranded to Grim Legion Havoc. They're currently sitting at 3-1 as well, kind of tied with Alarion Gaming Black for that second seed currently. Obviously we're only in week 3 though. There's a lot more games to play. But what do you think about Grim Legion Royal's chances to make playoffs? And what do you think kind of what some of their weaknesses are?
Well, I'll tell you what their strength is, and that's their bot lane. Their bot lane had a fantastic game, and I think they're going to keep having games. They had such a great focus on bot side. But I don't want them to get lost in that, and I want to see them be able to play top side when we do have those more competitive bot lane matchups. So that's what I'm kind of looking for when we talk about Grim Legion Havoc. It is.
Yep.
Being 3-1, I mean, when you talk about weakness, it's going to take a lot more to kind of show what they've got.
So my question with Grim Legion Havoc, I guess, is so you're saying they play very strong side with their bot lane. Now, do you think that kind of exposes their top side as a weakness? Because I remember watching them last year when they were Grim Legion Royal, or last split rather, and they had a really, really good start to the season. They were considered one of the more dominant teams. I actually had them pinned to go undefeated at one point, and then in the middle of the season, as we headed into the late season, it kind of looked like they fell apart a little bit. And I believe they still made playoffs. They might have actually missed playoffs. I'd have to double check that and get back to you. But so my biggest worry for Grim Legion Royal is kind of a repeat of that. What are your thoughts? Is their strong side, them playing to their strong side bot lane? Do you think that's enough to carry them into playoffs this time around, or do you think that might bite them because of their weak top laner and mid lane, or do you think they've kind of shored up those weaknesses?
I don't think it's a bad idea to play on your strong side, but what I do want to see is a little bit of diversity when we're talking about who we're going to focus around, because teams can pick up on that and they can make plans to set up on that. So if you play to your bot side, they're going to go and send their jungler bot side all game doing counter ganks and making sure that their bot lane can get ahead. That's just kind of the things. But at the same time, Grim Legion Havoc has changed their draft, their lineup since I've watched them. They've changed, I believe, their top laner. Their top laner went to jungle, and their bot laner has changed as well as their support. So right now, it's a very new team for me. So I want to see what they have now that they're this new Grim Legion.
Gotcha.
Maybe they have cleared up more weaknesses than I even know.
Gotcha. Well, I will say I was wrong. Grim Legion did indeed make playoffs last season as the second seed from Body Division. We're obviously glad to have them back, this season, and hopefully, they do. Those changes that they have made to their roster kind of shore up some of those weaknesses that we didn't even get a chance to really see. Obviously, we don't know the inner workings of the rosters and stuff, so that'll be interesting. So what about Kevin and Co, or Team Kevin, or Kevin and Co, however they want to refer to themselves now?
Now, when I watched their first week match, they seemed very underwhelming to me. They didn't really do well in their laning phases. They got outclassed in each lane. But they did show signs of life. They had a great 4-man dive onto bot lane, getting first tower, showing that they can still come to play. So if they're still setting up map control like that, I think this team could be so much better than they've showed so far.
And which game is that in that you were speaking about?
That, I believe, was just a second.
Was it against Grim Legion Royal or Mediocre at best?
I think it was Grim Legion.
Okay.
So they were up against a very hard team for them to go and play against. So, but those are the teams that you have to beat if you want to make it to playoffs. So there's no way around it.
No, absolutely. When you're competing for a top 3 spot, you have to make sure you're taking down those top 3 teams. So this week, Kevin and Co plays against First Blood Esports, as well as Insanity Gaming. Based on what you've seen, what do you think their chances are in those games are, and what do you think that moving forward, what are some of the weaknesses they have to shore up? Because you said that they show signs of life, but it seemed like they were just kind of outclassed.
Well, I know First Blood Esports, I really hope they're coming out with a victory, because the First Blood hasn't been looking very good, but then 0-4 for the season. So hopefully they figure out what they need to do to win against this team. But I don't want them to take this victory and think that they're doing better. I want to see them really grow against those higher competitive teams, and those are the victories you want to look for.
Gotcha. So let's move on to Essentia Storm then. Essentia Storm obviously is a returning team from last split. Last split they came in third in their division. I believe it was Body. No, it was Soul. But last season they were obviously known as Essentia White, so it's basically a brand new team coming in under the Essentia org. And they've started 2-2, but they are the sole reason that Grim Legion Royal is not sitting undefeated along with SBK Embers. They did take them down in that late week 2 game. So what are your thoughts about that? What do you think about Essentia Storm here moving forward?
I mean, that obviously shows their strength, that they're taking down Grim Legion, because if their Grim Legion's looking great against these middle of the pack teams, then you got a good shot at bumping up and maybe getting past Grim Royal to playoffs. Yeah,
and I apologize everyone. We obviously mean Grim Legion Havoc. We obviously have our notes as Grim Legion Royal. They did change our name. Yeah. So I mean, from what you've seen though of Essentia Storm, they've taken down Mediocre at best and Grim Legion Havoc, but they've also dropped games to SBK Embers, as well as Kevin and Co. So, I mean, we said Kevin and Co. was struggling against these top tier teams, but Essentia Storm seems to almost drop games at random, but they also seem to take games off of people at random. So it seems Essentia Storm feels very coin flippy for me versus Kevin and Co. We kind of define them as, if they play against the top team, they lose. If they play against the worst team, they win. So we feel that Kevin and Co. is very middle of the pack versus Essentia Storm. You never know what to expect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they just need to work on some questionable things. I mean, I watched their game against SBK Embers, and their AD carry was up against a Sejuani Mortaris with no cleanse. I mean, that's just suicide at that point. Yeah. You're going into a match where you're not going. And it showed with how many bot lane ganks that they were able to pull off. You kind of hurt yourself when you make those kind of decisions, and those are the kind of decisions that keep someone from being a top tier team. It's not even just gameplay or, it's before in draft phase when you need to make the big decisions.
Gotcha. So let's move on from Essentia Storm then. And let's talk about the next team on the list, Insanity Gaming. Insanity Gaming is currently sitting at 1-3, with their only win being against. I gotta find it. First Blood Esports.
Took a game off, yeah.
But I don't remember if that
is not the biggest thing to, be proud of. First Blood's obviously dead last. They haven't been looking that great. So to take a game off of them is good, but where are you going to be when we're talking about big teams in this bracket, in this division?
Well, Insanity Gaming's win against First Blood Esports was a forfeit, and that's it was a forfeit. I believe First Blood has now forfeited 3 of their games, so that's why they had that first loss, and since then they haven't played. But I mean, it's like you said, even if they had played that game out and they had won it, that's beating a bottom seeded team. Where do they go from there? Because otherwise they're sitting 0-3, and obviously we need Insanity Gaming to show us more life. I think that Insanity Gaming, I look at their roster and I don't think these are a bunch of weak players with no potential. I think this is a team that it just doesn't seem like they're meshing.
No, and I don't think they have weak players. I mean, when I watched week 1, Salvation made a huge outplay on a dive on bot from an overextension from the jungler's gank and picked up a kill from it. So that just shows that, I mean, you're facing off against these bigger teams and you're still being able to get those outplays. Where is it happening? Where is the mid game happening? Because I mean, they also contested an Infernal Drake with no jungler around and no map control. So you're giving up 4 kills in that game, putting yourself in such a bad deficit instead of just making a good decision and just backing off. Those are the things you need to look at. It's I don't know who their shot caller is for the team, but kind of a questionable thing for me right now.
No, absolutely. So let's move on to mediocre at best, and this team. They're sitting 0-3 as well, not counting their forfeiture win against First Blood Esports. Mm-hmm. This is probably the team that I've been most critical of. Mm-hmm. You have a name like mediocre at best. I expect you to kind of be a middle of the pack team.
Live up to the name, right?
Yeah, and they're not doing that, and that's not me like shitting on their org's name or me shitting on them as players or anything like that.
Obviously, it's just a name, of course.
Yeah, but it's funny to poke fun at names. I used to own a team named Mental Esports, and people would be like, "Well, you're fucking insane." So, like, trust me, I get it, and I'm not poking fun at the name as much as or more. I'm using the name for comedic purposes, but they haven't looked mediocre at best. They've looked mediocre at worst. And it's sad to say because I think a lot of it really just comes down to the draft phase. I watched them draft Ashe support and I was just kind of dumbfounded. Like, I don't get what that was offering you that another support could offer you. And it's not even just that. It's just, I think it's a mixture of their draft phase. I think it's a mixture of, again, players not meshing together. I think it's a culmination of a lot of things that have kind of frustrated me about this team. And I'm really curious for your thoughts on it because, obviously I've kind of let you do most of the talking about all these teams, because I'm obviously no one wants to hear from me. I'm just the CEO. So, what are your kind of your thoughts on this one?
Well, I have actually a question for you. When you say that their draft phase needs work, do you think it's more of just they're using comfort picks that they think they can get these wins with, and that's why their draft isn't looking?
I mean, if you're comfortable on Ash support in a Plat Plus league, like, more power to you. But that's not comfort to me. I'm literally just trying to, like, see if I can troll wins out of people. Like, I feel like that's almost using the best of one format to try and essentially try to pull like a G2, essentially, like picking Pike top for the first time. Like, you're just trying to essentially try shock factor as an attempt to win.
I mean, well, it obviously didn't work, and I'd like to see them play some real League of Legends now and see what we have here, because where they're sitting now, we're not going to see much more unless they really step it up.
No, absolutely. I mean, going through, their drafts haven't always been like completely question mark. They've had, like, for example, they had Orin top, Lee Sin jungle, Ezreal AD carry. Like, those are all normal picks. But then you see Gangplank mid. The only person I know that runs Gangplank mid successfully is somebody like Tobias Fate, who is essentially a Gangplank one trick. And then like I said, you've got the Ashe support. Then you've got, and obviously, that was the only game I saw from them. They did forfeit their other two games in week 1, but that one draft just stood out to me so much that it frustrated me to the point where I'm like, if this is how they're going to draft all the time, then it feels like they're in serious trouble.
It speaks to them that they forfeit 2 games and then did a crazy draft. I mean, it just speaks to, you're not here to seriously play. Let's get serious, It's, a lot of people are here because they want to show that they're the best, and we want to see everyone at their best level. It's just competitive for everyone.
No, absolutely. And again, this isn't us, like, being like, either play or get out. You know what I mean? This is just us saying, like, for clarity purposes, that we want to see this team succeed. We want to see all these teams succeed. And when the one game that we get to see of you in the first 2 weeks is essentially feels like a troll game, that's frustrating. And that's not going into the fact that, they were down massively at one point and held their base. They obviously have
the skill
and the potential.
The sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, I just need to see, maybe they were just trying to have a fun game or something, or what was it about that game that just made them want to do that. And I really hope to, like you said, to see them play serious, to get serious and be competitive in an otherwise very competitive division.
Well, time will tell, and we'll see in the future weeks.
Yeah. We aren't going to talk about First Blood Esports, obviously, because they have forfeited all 4 of their games so far. 3 of their games so far, and only played that one game where they did suffer a loss. So let's go ahead and move on to the next division, which is going to be Seoul Division. So initial thoughts on Seoul Division. What was kind of your first thoughts watching this division play out?
The big team that stuck out to me was Recon 5. They looked like they were ready to play. They dominated Panther Gold. It was just everything. I mean, their mid and jungle synergy was on point in those games. They constantly had 4-man pressure on bot. I mean, that's what you're hearing from you. Hear me constantly say it.
Well, Alex is apparently having technical difficulties.
They're successfully diving. They're opening up the map with early turrets. And they even opened up the base before the 20-minute mark without Baron. I mean, you don't have Baron on the map yet, and you're opening up the base. That is extreme domination.
No,
they looked good to me.
Absolutely, and Recon 5 is another one of those returning teams from last season. The last season, just like Grim Legion Royal and Grim Legion Havoc, Grim Legion Royal, now Grim Legion Havoc is what I meant to say, had a very dominant split. Last season they finished 12-2, scraping out that first seed of their division. So, obviously this isn't a team that underperformed last season, and I was glad to see them come back this season.
Well, I mean, and they're facing a team like Panther Gold that's not a bottom of the barrel team.
Yeah, no, they're one of those middle of the pack teams.
They're facing a middle of the pack, even high contention for third place.
Oh, so absolutely! It really speaks volumes about them.
It really shows that they're doing good in their bracket.
So, honestly, I'm really excited that we have 2 4-0 teams currently in this division, who will get to meet in week 4. In that week 4.
Hell of a game.
In Zephyr Esports and Recon 5.
Now, how do you think Zephyr looked? Because I haven't really got to see much of their games, so I'd like your thoughts on that.
I mean, you don't go 4-0 without looking good,
Yeah.
So, they've taken down again. You mentioned Unipanthers Gold, who Recon 5 took down. Unipanthers Gold also lost to Zephyr Esports, which unfortunate for Gold. Having to play the best 2 teams in the division.
2 teams in the start.
But I don't believe Zephyr's game was as dominant. I think it was much more kind of clinical. Like, if I recall correctly, it was a much more slow roll, like get leads and really push those leads to the limit.
So just clean League of Legends.
Yeah, when I think of Zephyr, I think much more cleaner League of Legends. Not to say that they can't be a Fiesta hard smash team, but they're very careful with their play, and I think it shows. I think there's a reason they're sitting 4-0. So I'm really excited to see them eventually go against Recon 5 in 2 weeks.
Against Recon, who's like an explosive team. I really would like to see what happens in that kind of game.
Yeah, absolutely. With that being said, though, like I said, Zephyr sitting 4-0, Recon sitting 4-0. Not really a lot to talk about there, as we really haven't gotten to see anything from them. So what about Unipanthers Gold, though? Because Unipanthers Gold is sitting 2-2, both their losses coming down to Recon 5 and Zephyr Esports. What are your thoughts regarding them?
Well, I still think they're a very good team, despite having to play the best in their division in 1 week. So I do credit them for how they played, but from what I saw, there was a lot of outlaning going on, a lot of solo kills being given over. So if they could watch out for that, maybe slow down the early game snowball, I think they can contest mid game a lot better and make it a closer game next time.
Gotcha. So I mean, those are kind of our top 3 teams right now, I think, in both our opinions. Yeah. Obviously Recon 5 and Zephyr, because they're sitting so high in the standings.
I do still think UT Esports Blue has been looking very good, even despite their 2 losses.
Gotcha.
Another one that's up there with Panthers.
I heard. So, I mean, why don't you go ahead and jump into that then? What are your thoughts on UT Gold then? Or UT Blue, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, for their first week, they got a 2-0 on stream. So that went very well for them. They got a win against Team Solo Kill and Rated R, which I know are lower in the standings right now, but still good wins. I mean, they had great map control and they showed great macro, and that's why I don't want to like make them out to be a middle of the pack when they are looking like a top tier. So we'll see. They got an early Baron at 22 minutes. That's, I mean, that just shows the control you have on the map. And they ended a game with a 15k gold lead. That's ridiculous. So, I mean, they're blowing out these lower end teams, and they're showing that, hey, we're a team to contest for top. So I'd really like to see more games out of them.
Gotcha. And, you know, UT, obviously their 2 losses last week were to Uni Panthers Gold, who we've already spoken about as one of those teams that we consider a top tier team, as well as Zephyr Esports.
Yeah. So again, it's more of just, this is what it's going to look like until they can step up and make that next level to their team play.
Yeah. So what do you think about, you know, going back to another 2-2 team? What are your thoughts on Team Jet Black?
I actually haven't seen much on them. So, what teams have they played against?
They lost to Recon 5 in week 1. They beat Team Solo Kill in week 1. And then in week 2, they beat Rated R and lost to Zephyr. So this is another one of those teams that unfortunately has played the top 2 teams in the division.
So that's kind of where all of our teams sit, except for Uni Panthers. Got a win over middle of the pack team.
Yeah.
So for me, again, I'm just gonna have to see how it pans out and where these middle of the pack teams do against these 2 dominant forces that they have above them.
Gotcha. No, I agree. I think all 3 of these teams really need to show life against these top two teams, as well as need to, you know, start making sure they're taking wins off of each other to kind of secure that 3rd seed spot. I 100% agree. So let's move down then. What about Asian Invasion? Asian Invasion is sitting at 1-3. They've played against Recon 5.
Against
their win was against Rated R.
Because I did watch that game, and I was very unimpressed with even how they won the game. It was a very sloppy game between both teams. Team fights were unorganized. You're talking about, you know, loss of control multiple times that's leading to longer games. So I wasn't impressed, but I'm glad, you know, they showed that they can get that victory, and they can pull out a victory after multiple, you know, upsets.
Well, keep in mind, Asian Invasion has, their losses have been, or I'm sorry, yeah, Asian Invasion, I was right. Their losses have been to, English is hard, I'm sorry, Zephyr. They've also lost, Recon 5, and then Uni Panthers Gold. So all teams that we've praised highly.
But despite that, even despite that, we talk about their win against a lower tier team, and they're not looking like they're stomping. They're not looking like they're way above that skill level. They're looking like they're right where they're supposed to be. So it's going to take some stepping up with the coordination and communication between these teams to kind of better themselves to that middle of the pack.
Gotcha. So what do you think about Rated R then? Because Rated R, their one win is against Team Solo Kill.
Their way is just trying to scrap through these games. They take small fights, unorganized. Kind of seems like they're not on the same page. So, again, it's one of those teams where communication needs to come in and say, hey, we're team fighting bad. Let's work on that. Hey, we're not doing this right. Let's communicate better. One person goes in, no one follows. It's just kind of hard to watch sometimes.
Gotcha. So what do you think about Team Solo Kill then? Because, I mean, obviously, you know, we've kind of criticized Asian Invasion and Rated R for not being able to step to the plate and just being overall really scrappy teams. What do you think about, you know, TSK, who has really struggled thus far in the split? They are sitting 0-4. You know, what are your general thoughts on them?
Well, They had multiple for a team called Team Solo Kill. They were killed solo multiple times.
So they're living up to their name. They just need
Living-
to add the ED at the end of the kill, right? So Team Solo killed.
but in all seriousness, they drafted Galio, and then they don't really play to the strength of Galio, which is you have that massive threat that just walks on another lane and can be in this middle of this team fight at any second.
Mhm.
You know, you're having a TP and a Galio ult just in case things go rough. And we're still not seeing teams want to use that as a threat and split push.
Mhm.
So it comes down to plays like that. They completely threw a game against UT Blue that they could have won. They just gave up the gold lead. They didn't convert off of the gold they got from the early game, and it just led to a huge loss.
So you think that the potential's there? It's just about kind of cleaning everything
They're
up.
so close to getting this stuff. It's just fix the small stuff and work on your pressure game.
Gotcha. All right, so I mean that pretty much covers Soul Division. You know, what are your thoughts? You know, we actually forgot to talk about a player for Body Division that we thought was the standout player. So let's talk about who you think the player for Body Division to watch out for is, and then we'll talk about who you think.
I have a few players on SPK side. SPK Embers, Sleepily looks amazing in the mid lane. He is just carrying his team on his back and saying, "Don't worry, guys. You need damage. I can provide that." And then Yard played a Morgana game on support again for SPK, and just bindings were on point, finding the pressure to make those teams have to be careful and watch their step.
Mhm.
I also thought Aryan Black Gaming Sheeta was making some massive outplays in the mid lane, looking like a huge contender and so on. I would say, watch out, this player's coming.
Gotcha.
And then Hook the ADC, their support. He was on point with his Nautilus game. Didn't have the best game on Pike, but we did get to see that disgusting Nautilus that he did not miss a hook for like the first 10-20 minutes in the game. So I was very impressed.
Heard. So now let's go back to Soul Division. What do you think the player of Soul Division is?
For Soul Division, Recon 5 has My Pet Turtle. That guy is disgusting.
You just like him because he has an animal in his name, like you.
Well, you know, he gets some brownie points for that, but when you watch this guy, he obviously has a pet turtle because he is just flying all over the place. I was very impressed with his jungle performance. And then their mid laner, Wu Yang.
If he is a turtle, wouldn't he be crawling everywhere?
Whatever, man.
I'm just trying to make sure we're all clear on this.
There's two junglers in the division that have like these animals, and no one plays Udyr.
That's disappointing. You think with a name like My Pet Turtle?
Oh my dear.
Oh my god. Alright, anyways, I'm sorry, continue.
Wu Yang in the mid lane. It's just a force to be reckoned with. He obviously, I don't know if I can say mid lane, because he was in bot lane more than he was in mid lane. He sat there and controlled the bot side of the map beautifully.
And which team is this for?
Got a solo kill on a Zed on Galio. Huge.
Heard. Maybe he should change his name to Wu-Tang Clan then.
UT Blue Esports. I want to talk about J-Car. This guy's Azir. 4-man Azir ult. Led into Compulse, their top laner on Aurelia. Coming in and getting a huge victory in that team fight. That just won them the game.
Heard.
Now, their jungler, Lord Bacon Bits, had a great first game on Ornn, but I think he had a rougher game for game 2. He also played Ornn in week 1, and it didn't look the best, but I still want to give him recognition for that game 1 victory. It looked amazing.
Heard.
And there is even those smaller teams that I do have a few players to look out for. On Asian Invasion, I have Klexo, who just looked very clean on in the mid lane, showing the outplay potential and just racking up some real damage on the Tristana. And then Little Cutie Vert from Rated R Esports on support. And I know what you're thinking, what? Their support? No, yeah, that making plays on Nami. I mean, all over the map, landing bubbles, setting up plays. Was 4-1 at one point. Just doing an amazing job to be everywhere and support the team.
Gotcha. All right, so I mean, I think that covers Seoul Division, and I think the only thing we need to still talk about in Seoul Division actually is who do you think the top 3 teams are? Like, if someone was to hold a gun to your head right now, who are the top 3 teams getting out? Because we have that large middle of the pack with Uni, Panthers Gold, Jet Black, and UT Esports Blue.
It's such a hard fight because UT Esports Blue, and this is obviously, we know Zephyr and Recon. We're talking about for number 3.
Yeah.
So it's between, for me personally, Panthers Gold and Esports Blue, because when I look at Panthers Gold, I see that they have such a great team fight, and they do think. But I look at Blue and I'm like, these guys have the players to get it done, and it's all if they came to play that day.
Heard.
I'm looking at J-Car and Compulse for the Blue victories right now.
You hear that, Jet Black? You guys need to step it up. We don't think you're one of the top 3.
So I'm fishing for Blue, Esports Blue, to get to number 3. But I mean, we got plenty of games to play, so we're gonna see.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to take Jet Black in this. I think that Jet Black looked good in their wins. I think that, again, being that their 2 losses were to Recon 5 and Zephyr, I think that, that's nothing to be upset about. I think that they have plenty of potential, and I think that even in their losses, they look fairly competent. So I'm going to take Jet Black in this.
I'm just happy with this whole division. Honestly, I feel like this is a very close division compared to the others, and it's kind of exciting to see where we're going to be standing, in a few weeks.
No, absolutely, especially in 2 weeks when we have that Recon 5 versus Zephyr match. But
yes, I am very excited to see that.
We still have a whole nother division to talk about, so let's go ahead and jump into the final division. Of course, speaking about Life Division, the end all of everyone. So this is another one of those divisions that, honestly, you have the middle and top, and then you've kind of got 2 people sitting at the bottom at 0-4.
We're seeing a trend in most of these that there's not much. There's always those 2 big names, or at least one big name, and then we're seeing a lot of middle of the pack. This one seems like a lot more middle of the pack than any other group.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no team sitting at 1 and 3. Everyone's 2 and 2 or better, except for the bottom 2 teams who are, of course, sitting at 0 and 4. So, obviously, right out of the gate, what are your initial thoughts regarding this division?
I'm just looking for who's going to be the first one to take on the Saiyans. Obviously,
Saiyans, you mean? Did you watch Dragon Ball Z? Come on.
Right.
Their logo is literally a Dragon Ball with Goku's face in it.
So yeah, but they're 4-0 right now. And off of the teams that they have, do you know the teams they've played?
Yeah, they've taken down Zero Tolerance Alpha, UT Esports Gold, Tempest Rampage, and Original Esports.
So again, we have these 2 teams sitting at 3-1, Akuma and Go Next, both 3-1, and still haven't played them. So I'd love to see where this is going to kind of lie in. We might have even middle of the pack than we thought, and then we're all tied for like a top tier spot coming out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely do have that potential.
It's a very close run right now.
No, absolutely, and my initial thoughts on this division were indeed that, where it's we have all these teams who seem relatively close in skill level, which is saying a lot because this is the division that holds last season's or some of last season's champions players rather in Go Next Gaming. Obviously, you have Tron returning under a new organization in Go Next Gaming. His team last split won the whole thing, so the fact that he's not even the one team sitting 4-0, I think speaks volumes about how competitive this division really is.
Yeah. So question, between Akuma and Go Next, where do you think it sits when we start going into the later weeks, where these teams are gonna go 4-1, or are they gonna start sitting down with the 3-2?
I think.
Okay.
No. I was just thinking. I think that Go Next Gaming plays against Sicko Sans right out of the gate next week. I think that we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see.
Do you need that game to kind of see where we're standing here?
Yes and no. I think that'll give kind of the definitive answer, but I think that without even seeing that game, my money would be on Go Next Gaming. Not to take anything away from Sicko Sans, but just because I think that from my standpoint, I think it would make better storylines if we kind of had all these teams sitting at one loss, or the top three teams all sitting at one loss.
And again, Sicko Sans haven't played these other two top of the tier teams, so it's kind of a toss-up right now. There's nothing guaranteed.
No, absolutely. And it's crazy to think about that in the last three divisions. We've talked about UT Esports Blue and OTA Cinders, and their sister teams are in this division, and we're not even talking about them as a top competitor for this division. That's how competitive this division is.
Yeah. I see a lot of big names in this division, and as much as it says the group of life, the division of life, it ain't anything like that.
Oh no, this is probably your division of death right here.
This is the division of death right here. We need to rename it and refigure it out, because these are big names and they are going to be scrapping for a place in playoffs.
No, absolutely. I have my kitty.
You have your cat?
Yeah, she's crawling all over me. No, I think that, so, obviously we need to start going through a rundown of all these teams. We've spoken a lot about Sicko Sans already. What are your thoughts on Akuma Blades? What's your thought on them?
They have taken a game against Go Next Gaming. So when I see this team, I'm like, they're going against these bigger teams. We've seen the clash of these titans in the middle, and they're just kind of shooting off on these other low end teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they have an easy way to get to top. It could happen.
No, absolutely. Sorry, my cat's, like I said, my cat's crawling all over me.
You're throwing me off, man. But what does worry me is, they did take a game. They did lose a game to OTA Glacials. Is that going to be significant in the upcoming weeks when we're talking about how close the standings are here? Can we drop games to lower teams?
No, absolutely. And again, that's not us saying Glacials, though, is a bad team.
No,
it's just the fact that
this is.
Yeah, no, it absolutely has to do with the fact that, this is such a competitive division, and that, again, we were talking about OTA Cinders, their sister team, as a top team in one of the other divisions, and yet here they are, their sister team, who you expect to at least be in, like, equal skill level, or, just a tiny bit worse, sitting at 2-2 in this division, when in the other division we're talking about them as a leader. So I think that just speaks words to Akuma Blades, being a leader in this division right now, sitting in the second seed, but
and
still.
When you say Go Next Gaming, is going to take a game off of Sicko Sans, does that mean that Akuma has a good way of coming on top since they've already beat Go Next? Does that tell us anything, or was that just a really rough game and we need to just walk away from it and see what comes next?
No, absolutely. Sorry, my cat is, as you can see, my cat is literally like all on top of me. Come on, Loons.
Throw your cat to the side, and we're talking League of Legends.
She's being cuddly. Here, I'll put her like this. But no, and I don't know if that necessarily means that Akuma Blades is going to come out on top. I think taking down Go Next Gaming is absolutely a good step. But, we very well could be looking at a trifecta similar to Group D in Worlds, where you have Invictus Gaming, Damwon Gaming, and Team Liquid all sitting at 2-1.
Based on who's going to come to perform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, just like in that group, we said if you lose a game to the bottom seed team in I can't even remember. That's how unimportant that team is. But if they drop a game against one of the teams that isn't, or to the team that isn't one of those top 3 teams,
you're doing a great job.
Shut up. Then I think that we all agreed that you're essentially going to be booted from that division. And is this loss that Akuma Blades did suffer going to be the proverbial nail that knocks them out of that top 3?
What will happen with this? Will go next loss to Akuma Blades be a big factor? It's all these small factors coming in this division.
No, absolutely.
Now when we talk, let's talk middle of the pack right now, because we got the Tempest Rage, Original Esports, and OTA Glacials. Now, out of those 3, which one do you see kind of being right next to Go Next and Akuma in the standings, or do you not see any of them really getting close on game?
So Tempest Rampage is another one of those returning teams that I was very high on. I've spoken to their org, or not their org, but their team captain, multiple times. I would probably say that Tempest Rampage is my favorite out of those 3 teams to make it out. If I had to pick one of those 3 that I thought stood the best chance, rather, to get into the playoff circle, Now, right now, Loons.
You're gonna have a new co-host.
But I think that Tempest Rampage out of those 3 teams would probably be the team that I would say stands the best chance at getting out of the playoffs. Sorry, my cat will not leave me alone. I don't want.
It's called closing the door.
But as your doors open, I can see it.
I don't have a cat.
But again, OTA Glacials is not a team that I say I can sleep on, because OTA Glacials does have that sister team that is leading the pack.
Taking a game off of Akuma Blades means something.
No, absolutely. Versus Tempest Rampage, their losses are to Sicko Saiyans and to Akuma Blades. So they've lost to these upper echelon teams, but
which
Glacials
talking about,
but
Glacials have already been doing successfully.
Yeah, but Glacials then lost to Tempest. So
so this is where we sit. Are all these teams just on a very close level, and are we looking at the closest division that we have?
I genuinely believe that this is the closest division, because even if you were to look at the other 2-2 team, even if they I almost said UTA, it's Original Esports. Original Esports, again, lost to Akuma Blades, but beat Zero Tolerance Alpha. Then
they also lost to Sicko Saiyans.
But they beat UT Esports Gold. So they're beating the teams that are below them, but they're losing to the teams that are above them. And I think that that's the biggest issue for most of these 2-2 teams.
I think that's why Original, for me, hasn't really shown that they came to step up to these higher ranks yet. I think I need to see them play like Tempest Rage or Glacials to really get a good seed to where they should be.
Heard. I mean, I agree. I think that the biggest issue is that they haven't played against one of these upper echelon or one of these middle of the pack teams and really shown what they've got. They've played against the top 2 and the bottom 2, and I think that that's where it stands right now for Original Esports. But again, Tempest Rampage and Glacials, if I were to say between one of those 2 teams, which I think will get out in top 3, I would have to go with Tempest Rampage, just because it is a team I'm more familiar with. But again, that's not me taking away anything from Glacials.
Tomorrow, let's look at tomorrow, or should I say, let's
Sunday.
Look at next week's games. Tempest Rage plays Original Esports.
Yep.
So what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that Original Esports, again, I haven't seen enough of them against these middle of the pack teams. Against the top tier teams, it wasn't like they stopped playing League of Legends, and just watched the opponents play solitaire. They at least made attempts to make plays. They did what they could. to stay in the game, and the games obviously were extended because of that. But again, Tempest Rampage I've seen more of. I've seen them be very consistent against the top echelon teams last season, and I think that they stand a chance. I think Original Esports stands a chance, but if I were to give it betting odds, I would say that Tempest Rampage definitely walks in with the advantage.
Now, we haven't really talked much about these low-end teams. We have UT Esports Gold and Zero Tolerance Alpha, which both 04. My big question is, I know that they're not looking great. They're not doing well against these teams because, again, when you're at the bottom and you're playing against these teams where we have such close standings, it's hard to even look good against one or two teams, So my question for you is, do you see any of these teams making an upset game and maybe taking one of these top teams that are trying to compete and knocking them down for it?
Well, my issue is Zero Tolerance Alpha, they played their 2 games last week, and then they forfeited week 2, and that's frustrating for me. And I think that if you're ever in a situation where you're forfeiting games, I think that you automatically kind of disqualify yourself essentially from being considered one of those teams that's just kind of been unlucky so far and really needs to just shape things up. I think when you forfeit games, I think you're admitting that you didn't stand a chance. And again, I could be completely wrong. For all I know, they just had work stuff. Yeah. But that's my perspective as like if I were a coach or a team captain.
Well, then what are your thoughts on UT Esports Gold?
UT Esports Gold, let's take their loss against, Original Esports as an example. We're saying Original Esports is a very middle-of-the-pack team, lost against the upper teams, beat the lower teams. They only managed 4 kills against them. And that game was only 23 minutes.
So you don't think that they can get an upset win against any of these teams that we're looking at?
I mean, I'm very much one of those people that says any given Sunday. So I think, and this division is on Sunday, so I'm just saying, but no, in all seriousness, I think that I would need to see a massive kind of overhaul for them because so you want to talk UT Esports Gold, let's talk about their game against Sicko Sands. We're saying Sicko Sands is the best team in this division right now. What are our thoughts on how they play against them? So you look at that game was 19 minutes and 22 seconds. So you're gonna. So
right now we're not really thinking that they're gonna be able to make an upset unless they make some serious changes to their gameplay.
Yeah, So again, this is another team where I'm critical of the draft. Let's take the game against Sicko Sands. They walked in with a very solo queue-esque draft. They had Kled top, Kha'Zix jungle, Akali mid, Xayah AD carry, and Rakan support. Now, I know you're thinking, well, Xayah, Rakan, Kled, and Akali, those are all competitive picks. But you know what makes those picks competitive? A tank jungler with CC. None of those champions offer guaranteed crowd control.
So you're looking for the guaranteed crowd control to kind of make it all mesh together. Keep them in place, keep them locked down.
Yeah,
I can see that because you're seeing a lot of these teams picking up those. Look at Lee Sin, got his displacement. We got Rek'Sai, who's getting those unburrows. We're seeing those bigger CC champions come out in the jungle. It's not going to be these aggressive, damage-dealing champions.
Well, and that's the thing. Excuse me, by the way, but that's the thing. Even in their game against Go Next Gaming, they managed a close game. It was 43-22 in kills. It went 35 minutes.
That is a scrappy game.
Yeah, but the difference was their draft. They had Renekton, Rek'Sai, Veigar, Xayah, and Nautilus. The difference in those drafts is insane, and it was a much closer game as a result. And I think that if they continue to draft well,
we're not looking at these players are just playing too bad they can't compete. We're looking at they're not drafting well. Let's fix the draft so we can get some closer games.
No, absolutely. And I think as you get those closer games, I think more of them will fall your way. And I think that's where I'm at with UT Esports Gold. I think they need to take a lesson from UT Esports Blue, and I think they need to say, you know what?
Yeah, ask your sister for.
Yeah, exactly. And when you have a sister team that's doing well in another division, you should be scrimming that team every night you get the chance, because that's how you improve. Playing more, working on your draft more, and just I think they have all the pieces they need. I think they just need to make sure that they're falling into place.
Because I would love to see 8 teams, all equal skill, battling it out for playoffs. That would just be the most ridiculous thing.
And you have 6 of them.
And you have 6 right there. We're just looking for these 2 bottom teams to kind of step up their game and kind of figure out their problems and get competitive, because there's plenty of games to play still. This is nowhere near over.
Yeah, there's 10 games left for every team.
There's 10 games to figure out what your problem is.
No, I agree.
So I'm excited for. I'm very excited for this division. I know the Seoul division's exciting, but this one's also super exciting for me. I think the other 2 divisions, I think Mind and Body, are pretty set in stone right now, until we see what other teams come to play.
Yeah, unless we see some roster changes or other teams really step up their gameplay. Because
I don't know if they have coaches set up, but I think they really need to look at these games with their coaches, and maybe we can see some more competitive action in the other divisions.
No, absolutely. I think so let's go from there, and let's take a moment and say, all of these teams that we've talked about today, be it on the lower end or the upper end, we believe they have the potential. But right now we're saying that these are the teams we think have the best potential. So
unfortunately, the 2 of us, obviously, we have to go off of stats. We can't just say, I believe in them. We want to give people the facts, and we want to talk about what gives people the information of what's going on and the best predictions for these people. So for us to see the stats and see how people are playing, that's what we have to base it off of.
No, absolutely. So
it does not mean that these teams cannot take on the next step.
No, absolutely. So real quick, I mean, before we exit out of fall, or exit out of life rather, who is your player to watch in this division? Who are your players to watch?
It's just so.
There's so many.
So many people in this roster.
For me, my player to watch is Tron out of Go Next Gaming, simply because he is one of the returning champions. He last season, there was like a statistic where it was like every single game that he was involved in, his team won. When he wasn't there, his team lost. So obviously this dude is a voice, he is a leader, and he really needs to make sure that he's driving his team forward to find that success.
I'd have to give mine to Sicko Saiyan's rule book. He had some ridiculous kill participation in some of these games, and that would be their top laner, I believe.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's their top laner, and he showed some ridiculous KP across the boards.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's head into some of the questions. I pinged the Discord, obviously, before we started this to try and get some questions, and I'm sure we got some absolute troll.
I hope there's none about your cat.
I'm sure we got some absolute troll questions, but I'm sure we also have some serious questions. So our first serious question: who do you think the front runners to win the split? So let's obviously go through each division and say who we thought the chance to win the division was. Those will be our 4 teams that we say had the best shot to win the.
Well, we can even talk about between each division how each team's looking, kind of what we think.
So
in that sense.
Yeah, so we obviously, for Mind Division, we had Team Fish Taco, OTA Cinder, and Famous Gaming. If you were to pick one team out of those 3, who would it be that you think could win the split?
I personally think TFT, Team Fish Taco, is going to be taking this one, but we are so early in
No, absolutely. I would, just because I like the diversity answers, I would actually take OTA Cinder. They have a sister team that, like we said, isn't a top team in another division, but they're taking games off of top teams, and I think that gives me hope for when they're scrimming each other, to really improve and learn from each other and really stand a chance. In body division, SBK Embers, Alarion Gaming Black, and
it's gotta just be SBK right now.
You don't think Alarion Gaming Black and Grim Legion Royal?
Like I said, they have the opportunities to take these games off SBK, but I think SBK, the way they look right now compared to these other teams, are blowing it out of the park.
Gotcha. I mean, I agree. I think SBK Embers right now looks like the dominant force.
Full confidence. I would give full confidence to Grim Legion, but they've had a lot of roster changes. I don't know yet. I want to see where we go with that.
Gotcha. And then obviously we move into the fall split. We have Zephyr, Souls division for the fall split. We have Zephyr Esports, Recon 5. We're the two that we said were head and shoulders above.
Now these are two very different teams when we look about play style. Recon's very explosive. They want to get things done fast. Zephyr's a slow rolling team. Now, what are your thoughts on which one you would take?
I would take Recon 5. I think right now we live in a meta that is all about explosive. I think that we're talking about G2 Esports as a favorite to win Worlds, and when you think G2 Esports, you don't think slow, controlled games. You think explosive. Versus if you were saying SKT, you would say Zephyr.
I agree. I think Recon 5 will be making it out, but that's not to discredit Zephyr. Who knows? They could have an explosive set or explosive team as well, but they just want to play it more slow and controlled right now. So we'll see when we see that match coming up.
Gotcha. So first seed from that division, we both have Recon 5 pinned right now.
Recon, yeah.
So let's move to Life division, the final division. We have Sicko, Saiyans, Akuma, and Go Next. We're kind of like the top three that we were saying about, but we also said there were three other competitors. Which team would you say right now is going to come out first in this division and has the best chance to win the split?
Honestly, I think I'm going to go with Akuma Blades. They took a game off of Go Next Gaming. Sickos haven't really played anyone in a serious, contention spot. I think they've already done that, and they showed that they can get a victory off of that. So now it's kind of sitting to how it goes for next week. Gotcha.
I'm going to actually take Sicko Saiyans. I agree they haven't played the two teams that we say are right on their heels, but they have taken down, they have taken
4-0 for
yeah,
4-0.
They have taken Tempest Rampage and Original Esports down fairly convincingly. So that that leaves us with Recon 5, Team Fish Taco Tempest, Sicko Saiyans, and SBK Embers. Out of those four teams, which one do you think has the best chance to win the split right now?
I got it really down between Recon and SBK. Those are the two teams I'm really looking at because those were the ones that most impressed me. Recon 5 now impressed me a little more just to the fact that they had such a clean victory versus SBK did have a victory that seemed kind of, scrappy. So just based on how things are looking, I would go with Recon 5.
Heard. I think I'll rep SBK in this sense, just because again I do like having different answers, but not just because of that. I think yes, SBK did have that kind of shaky win, but it does show that they can play in all sorts of games. Versus Recon 5 has really only shown that explosive. We're ahead, so we're gonna win game. So I would really like to see Recon 5 play from behind. So for that reason, I'm gonna give it to Embers.
Good point.
Obviously to TLDR, our answer, our two teams that we think stand the best chance to win the division, or to win the split rather, are SPK Embers and Recon 5. Not to discredit any other teams.
It is still so early that these are just purely based on what has happened.
Yeah. What division looks the strongest overall?
Oh, Life for sure.
Yeah, I would say Life followed by Soul.
I think I would be afraid if all of these teams were able to play all the other teams. You know what I mean? Like, you start sending these other teams to other divisions, and it just sounds scary. But when I'm talking about pure force power, I'd have to give it to Soul.
Gotcha.
You
So
have those two strong 4-0 teams that both look beautiful.
heard. So now we say that those are the two best divisions in terms of strength. What about in terms of interest to watch? What do you? So, real quick, Glexo was the one that asked who we thought the front runners were. ZS Akeda was the one that asked who's the strongest overall, and now you have Gank Bot Police who's asking what is the most exciting to watch overall.
So I think the strongest I would have to give it to the Soul, just based on we have two 4-0s. They're looking extremely strong, and they've showed great potential, and most of their games have been blowouts. But when I look at the Life division, there's just so much potential for people to make upsets and wins and knock each other in and out. I'd give my most exciting to Life.
Gotcha. So,
What are your thoughts?
most exciting to watch. I don't know. So it goes back to the question of, what do you like watching? Do you like watching a clean, clinical game, or do you like watching fiestas? I like fiestas. I think they're more interesting to watch.
A bit of both. I like to see teams know how to play the game and know how to scrap. There's so much to this meta.
So let me ask you this: would you rather watch SKT take down Clutch Gaming in a clinic, or would you rather watch G2 Esports Griffin?
Oh man, Griffin G2 all day.
Exactly. You like the Fiesta, so I gotta go with the Fiesta division. I'm gonna go with Mind. I think that Mind division. Mind? Yeah, I think the fact that we had a team come back.
A lot of scrapping, man.
Yeah, I think the fact we had a team come back from a 9K gold deficit speaks just to how much Fiesta that division is. I gotta give it to Mind division.
What do you think is the most power? Life.
Oh, I think that Life has. We already talked about this. We said that we agreed that Life division is the strongest division in terms of overall competitiveness, but in terms of which two teams, if you had to pick three teams and say these have the potential to be the best three teams in the entire org, I think you pull away from Life division a little bit just because it is so competitive that you don't have that definitive answer, and I think you move to Soul where you go Zephyr, Recon 5, and then you pick any other team from that division besides TSK.
Well, I'd probably go with someone who's not 1 and 3.
Okay, but you get my point. You pick you pick Panthers Gold, Jet Black, or UT Esports Blue, and I think you have a really strong pair of three teams that you can say these teams stand a chance to win it all. So we have some joke questions now. We'll only take 2 joke questions. Is mayonnaise an instrument?
No, mayonnaise is not an instrument.
I'm gonna say yes. I've seen some impressive beats thrown down with some mayonnaise.
Okay, so what he just promised is that he's gonna play the mayonnaise instrument next time.
I have to get a box to contain it all in. That way, there's no mess. So this isn't really a joke question, but it is a good question. So Gankbot Police also asked this one. I'm going to change the question a little bit. The original question, what's been the most exciting match so far in each division, I'm going to change it to what is the most exciting match coming up for you?
Yeah, because I'm really excited for Zephyr. Honestly, they're two 4-0 teams. They both show incredible power. It's just gonna be a good game to watch, and it's coming up next week, right?
No, it's gonna be in week 4. We're headed into week 3, so we have another week. Yeah.
So if we're talking about next week's games, I
don't know. For me, next week, I think there's a pretty clear best game, and I think it's gotta be Sicko Sands versus Go Next Gaming. If I were to say the most exciting game out of all 4 divisions, I think that's definitely a pretty good contender. Just because those are 2 top teams in the division that we said it has the best potential. If I were to say beyond that, I don't know. It's tough.
I'm personally excited to see OTA Cinder versus Team Fish Talk.
I think that's a good one. Yeah. What about SPK? What about SPK Embers versus Grim Legion Royal?
Again.
Or sorry, Grim Legion Havoc. Grim Legion Havoc. I'm sorry.
Again, that's another reason. I mean, we're talking. I'm staying out of the other one because there's already so many good games to watch right here. Legion versus SPK. That's gonna be a big ass game. I can't wait to see that one too.
Oh, dude! And then you go down in the same week. You have Grim Legion versus Alarian Gaming. I'll
tell you what.
I think Body has the best games next week.
Just make sure you don't miss Body. All right. No matter what you got scheduled, don't miss Body because they got the biggest games coming up.
Next week, yes, next week. I think all 4 divisions actually have a really good game coming up this next week. At least one.
Watch the whole split. I mean, look how competitive the split. This is pretty competitive, honestly.
No, absolutely. This is very competitive for an amateur league. Usually, you have those 2 teams.
We talk about some divisions being stronger than others. I just think there's a lot to talk about in all of these teams.
No, absolutely. But we are cresting the hour-and-a-half mark, so I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to be done taking questions for this week. So, I mean, that about covers it for here today. Covers it here today for us at Plays Podcast. As always, if you have anything you guys want to ask us, make sure you're using that question channel I created so we can answer it in the next podcast. I'll make another announcement when we're doing the podcast. If you would like to give us any feedback or anything like that, feel free to DM us on Discord. Once we get into playoffs, we'll make sure we have a Twitter for you guys to add us at if you have any questions or if you guys want to just give us any feedback. With that said, Alex, do you have any closing statements you would like to add?
No, I'm just go Recon 5. That's all I gotta say.
Apparently we have bias here on the analyst desk.
I'm really doing it with Jacob, good friend of mine. I'm excited to do this every week, and I think we're going to be giving these teams a lot to think about coming up, and I think that's going to be a great experience for them.
No, absolutely, and I'm hoping that moving forward we can give kind of a deeper analysis. Obviously, we had time constraints, but next week we'll be able to talk strictly about the week 3 games and kind of give a much more deeper analysis. So we're looking forward to that, and we hope you guys are too. So with that, we want to wish everyone luck in the remainder of the season, and we will see you on the Rift. Have a great one, guys.